Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Munoz, CEO of the experience agency, D-Flash. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic experiment for Black History Month, where I'm going to interview 29 phenomenal Black women, and we're just going to talk about all the things that they're doing, how they're changing the world, and how they're making things happen because, it's what Black women do. Take a listen. I've got Adia Betts, who's an amazing senior copywriter who's joining us this week, and we're going to have a great conversation. Hey, Adia.
Hi, Laura. Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Year.
Yes.
I'm so psyched to have you on the show. I think we're going to have an awesome conversation. As always, because you've been listening to a few episodes, I ask the same question when we kick everything off. And I'm sure your answer will be fun. So, Adia, what was your first job?
First job, like ever, or first job in my field now?
Oh, whatever you want. Whatever you want.
I'll do both. So, my first job ever, I worked at Dairy Queen in high school, in Douglasville, Georgia, and it was terrible. But I was going on like a student ambassador international trip, and my mom was like, "Well, you got to come up with your own spending money." So that's what I did. I worked at Dairy Queen, slinging blizzards, and working at fast food. I really think everybody should do it. It's very humbling work. It's not easy. And then my first job in advertising, I worked at Burrell Communications in Chicago, Illinois, as a junior copywriter out of portfolio school. They gave me my first gig, and it really was a good foundation to get me started in my career. I'm very grateful for it.
So you started at Burrell. So of course so this would explain that in the advertising world, what is it you do right now?
So I'm currently a senior copywriter at VMLY&R Atlanta.
Awesome. And so how does one start from, Dairy Queen and end up to be a senior copywriter at VMLY&R?
I think I had sort of like the typical middle class trajectory of going to college, and then I majored in journalism at Howard University in Washington, D.C., minored in English. And then after that, I went to portfolio school back here in Atlanta at the Creative Circus. And then from the Creative Circus, like I said, I got my first job at Burrell. So kind of a sort of like, first you do this, then you do this, and then you get a job. So I'm very lucky in that I didn't have to scramble too much as far as figuring out what the next institution or having a network or things like that to kind of propel me forward. And then,
interesting. Go ahead. No, keep going.
Oh, because I forgot you said, how do I get to VML? So I worked a few years at Burrell, and then I moved to Boston. And I worked at Arnold Worldwide for a few years. Then I went to in-house at Puma. And then I came back to Atlanta because at that point, because of some of the experiences that I had in Boston, I was done with advertising. I was like, this shit's for the birds. I don't know how I'm going to continue to give my time and talent to people and organizations and institutions that don't give a damn about me, my community, anything like that. F this noise. I'm going to move back to Atlanta, start my own business, and freelance while I build my business. And then I saw this opportunity for VMLY&R, and I was like, well, let me at least apply for it, because consistent money is the nicest form of money there is. And I ended up being like a pretty good opportunity. So the intention is to still build my own business. That is why I'm here. That is what I'm doing. But my day job, my 9 to 5, is working at VMLY&R.
Ah, so it's interesting. Like you mentioned that you went to portfolio school,
Hmm.
and I talked to some other women who have done this as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think it's so important that especially younger people listening understand that like this is a solid path to get you into this crazy world that we're all a part of called advertising and marketing.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I was at Howard, so my degree is a journalism degree, but my major was actually advertising. And God bless my alma mater. I got a lot of amazing things out of it, but their particular advertising program didn't really set me up to get a job as a copywriter. So I left college not having a portfolio, interviewing at agencies for jobs in different departments, just trying to get my foot in the door, but I was not equipped to get the job that I specifically wanted. So I was like, okay, I guess I got to go to portfolio school, which I also have to acknowledge is a luxury in and of itself because it's not cheap. And it's not like you have access to the same sort of like um, scholarships or financial aid or things like that you would get for a 4-year institution. So, but it was the best choice for me. And luckily, I was in a place where I could get some financial aid for it. And it really did, it really did set my mindset up to just even think about what advertising was and how to concept and what that type of writing is, and just really like thinking through an advertising lens. I didn't have that coming out of undergrad. And again, even though creative circuits had a lot of flaws, it definitely positioned me to even just like have an advertising brain, to think like a marketer, to think like an ad professional. So I don't think I'd have been able to get in the door had I not gone to portfolio school. It was really necessary for me in my path.
Ah, well, I think it's important that folks understand that, like, yeah, it's not everything is for everybody, but you're a shining example as to how it can work to your excellent advantage and be phenomenal for your career. So, as
Right.
as your senior copywriter, what is it you actually do?
So I guess I have to break it down from like what I would be doing as a copywriter, no matter what level I was at. Is first and foremost, you are responsible for concepting, just your strategists and your account folks and all the good people who deal with the clients first come to you and they're like, this is what we're advertising, this is who we want to talk to, this is the message that we want people to walk away with, this is the action that we want them to do, here's the medium that you could get to play in. And it is my job, and sometimes often with a art director as a partner, to just creatively concept like, how do we get this message across in this medium or various forms of media? How do we, get people to buy this particular brand of toothpaste over this one? How do we get people to open Roth IRAs? How do we get people to test drive these cars? Whatever it is, it's just about like, it's kind of like creative problem solving and figuring out how you connect with people through a piece of communication. So that's one part of it, is just the creative concepting part. And then the other part is the actual craft of writing. Like, how do you take that concept and what does that look like in a 30-second radio spot? What does that look like in a 60-second TV commercial? What does that look like in a print ad that's going to be in a newspaper? What does that look like in a print ad that's a half page versus one that's a quarter page? So just trying to translate that craft, like, how do I say it in a paragraph? How do I say it in a single sentence? How do I say that in social media? And so just really learning the craft of how to write for each medium. Um, and that's pretty much what copywriting is. It sounds easier than it is. It's hard.
Oh, I'm sure, because one day you're writing about puppies, the next day you're writing about basketball players, the next day you're writing about pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, and then also you're writing about stuff that you have zero knowledge in. You have to like immerse yourself in it, or you're like, to be really real, you're writing about stuff that you don't actually give a damn about. Or
Thank you for
when
your honesty.
or shit that's really hard, you're writing about stuff that actually conflicts with you on a personal level and morally and with your values. Like that's when it really gets hard too. Um, but that's just the name of the game. And there's something to be gained through all of those experiences as long as you're not doing it to your detriment. But it's hard because, you know, if I had my way, I'd be writing like PSAs and about sneakers all the time. But that's not, I don't get that choice.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because we're in this industry where you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what do you do? So when you've had those sort of moments where you're like, I don't want to work on this stuff anymore, or like how do you sort of overcome those sorts of challenges in your career?
Um, I don't know if I've sort of had enough of those experiences where I have like an intentional and thought out way to overcome those. I Going back to like when I worked in Boston, it was probably one of the most negative professional experiences I've had in my entire life. And not just for some of the things that I was working on, but the people I was working with and under. And I feel no qualms about them possibly hearing this, by the way. They can like kiss my ass. But
And
zero qualms.
I appreciate no fucks given. I appreciate that entirely.
Yeah, like nary a fuck. So what I did is, so just to give a little bit of synopsis of the experience I'm referencing to, you know, Boston is, I told my mom when I moved there, I was like, I think white people were invented here. Like, this is arrogant. This is, you know how like, you see like on nature shows, like these turtles going back to the Galapagos to like lay their eggs. There's something instinctually in their brain that's like, go here. This is where you reproduce. I feel like that's what Boston is for white people. I feel like that's their Galapagos. That's where they lay their eggs. That's where they start. So for me, culturally, it was just like really uncomfortable, like socially just being out in the city. I had a lot of different types of roommates. I felt it in my home, was interacting with people that I shared living space with. And I felt it very palpably at my job where I think the agency at the time was between like 250 and 300 people. And I was there for a little under 3 years. And during that entire tenure, I was one of five Black women that worked there.
Damn.
And I was the only one ever in the creative department. Um, Two were receptionists, I believe. One was in like food services. One was an Afro Latina who worked in account management, and then there was me. So I felt othered on a daily basis. I felt misunderstood. I felt pigeonholed. I felt overlooked. I felt ignored. And then I was just outright disrespected out and out multiple times. And, you know, I was still young enough to like feel as if I just have to push this stuff aside. I care so much about my career. I'm so gung ho. You know, I think in advertising, especially in creative, we normalize like shit that we would never like normalize in everyday life. Like, oh, this person just disrespected the fuck out of me in front of a whole bunch of other people. But because of this job and because of this industry, we eat that stuff. But like outside of the four walls of those institutions, I would uppercut this person for talking to me like
I love you.
this. And it's like you don't realize how much that eats at you and it eats at you. And I got to a point where I really wanted to leave, but I didn't know what my options were. And I didn't want to leave to go somewhere else that was just like where I was, or I didn't want to leave with my tail between my legs. But then some things started happening that was like, oh, you cannot work here. So I remember getting a brief for a pharmaceutical client that was making medicine for like migraines. And the strategist was like, people who have migraines are discriminated against. It's sort of like a silent disease. And, if people can't see your ailments, they tend to mistreat you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I'm with you. And then this heifer went as far to be like, it's no different than racism or homophobia or sexism. And the way that people with migraines are treated are the same way that, Black folks are treated and gay people are treated. And I was like, whoa, Kimasabi.
What?
I was like, really? This is what we're doing? And it was a British strategist. And I know there's this like British strategist, like stereotype where it's like, if a British strategist says it, everyone's gonna eat it up. I don't know why, but it's a thing.
The action does the trick magically.
Yeah, like why they just eat it up. So that was one of the things I remember. Not long after the like Kylie Jenner Pepsi situation had happened, one of my coworkers, who was a little higher up than me, enough to be at like a decision-making level, came to me like hysterical because we were pitching one of those like, burner phone, mobile phone companies. And the creative that was going in the pitch deck was this sort of like anti-establishment, break away from the like, big bad phone companies in like a revolutionary standpoint. And this was probably around like 2016, 2017. And I noticed that like revolution as a concept was starting to become commodified. Like people were selling revolution as like a lifestyle. And it really made me sick. And she showed me this deck that they had put together. Now, mind you, I've been working at this place for 2+ years. I have seen all kinds of decks, and I ain't never counted more than 2 Negroes in any of these concept decks. They had a picture of where they clearly had Googled a protest, and what originally was a bunch of Black folks in a crowd with their fists up, Black power fists up, and they had superimposed the little fist emoji over all of their hands. Yeah. And didn't even change them to brown. So you have all these yellow fists over all these Black bodies. And this was the creative they were pitching with. And they were like, we're going to, take over the fist emoji and use that for our campaign. And I almost left that day, Laura. Like I almost walked out the door that particular day. So just compounded with the 2+ years of microaggressions and just straight up macroaggressions. And now that I'm starting to see how the lack of diversity is really, really impacting the creative. I was like, I don't want to be associated with an institution that pitches this kind of work to clients. And, but I still didn't have the balls to leave. And so I dragged my feet, and the university eventually kicked me out. These folks tried to fire me or tried to put me on a probation and threatened to fire me. And so I went on vacation during my little 30-day probation. And when I came, I had gotten caught in like a hurricane during my vacation and saw all this death and destruction around me. And then when I came back and I noticed that these folks didn't give 2 fucks about me, I put in my 2 weeks notice back. I came back on a Monday, I put in my 2 weeks notice on Friday. And so that whole long story to say, I don't have a sort of like well thought out intentional way of protecting myself against that kind of work. I experienced it in a way that almost broke me down to the point where I just like, that's why I don't give any fucks now. I'm just like, I refuse to put up with any of those things. So I guess now if any of that stuff came my way, I would just nip it in the bud immediately. No, I'm not working on that bullshit ass concept. No, you're not going to talk to me like you're crazy. No, I'm not working on that. And if it's a problem, we'll deal with it accordingly. I wish I could say something a little bit more profound about going to speak to people and being proactive about these things and fighting for change within the institution. I I ain't fighting to change for shit. If this is how y'all want to operate, that's cool, but I'm not going to help you do
Bless you. I could thank you. Thank you. That's literally all I need to hear. Because like I think that's all I think that's honestly so refreshingly honest about this. Because sometimes you're just like, I cannot and I refuse.
it.
Like it is literally the Nene Leakes meme from Housewives where she's like, I refuse.
Yeah.
No, because you know, the only way I think this stuff starts to change is when we put our damn foots down. And I'm like, no, not doing it. And
Yeah.
and if it's too much, I mean, I similarly had a situation where I was in an agency before I had DF, and I left without another job because I was like, I cannot. This is
That's what I did.
like,
I smooth left without another job. I'd say one of the most satisfying things is during that last 2 weeks, you know, people start to hear that you're leaving. So of course the natural thing is, where are you going? Where are you going? And I told every single last one of them, I don't know. I don't know.
my couch.
Right, which lets them know that I'm just leaving because I don't want to be up in this motherfucker no more. So that's like, I'm letting you know that my choice to leave wasn't because I found something better. It's because I'm done with this particular form of fuckery here. And it was so satisfying, and you could see the shock in some people's face, and you could see some of the like personal, like, I'm offended, you know, like, how dare you not want to be here? Yeah. But I left without having another job, and then I got really, after a month of like emotional detox and like just really coming to grips with where I was in my career and it not looking like I wanted it to look, and sort of the like aftershock of having gone through like, it was kind of a traumatic experience. Getting really, really specific with the universe about what I needed and what I wanted. And I'll be damned if I didn't get it.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. So it was just a lesson in sort of curating your own life and your own experiences. And once I was able to start seeing how the universe moved in my favor, when I got very serious about what I wanted instead of just taking and accepting what I had, shit's been different ever since. So that's why I'm like, no, not doing that. Because I've seen the universe back me up. I've seen the universe create a parachute when I've jumped.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's literally why I'm doing this series. Because as I said to you, I could have easily gone and like just gone to my regular network and just said, okay, I want 29 Black women to do this thing for Black History Month. But I really sort of set it out to the universe, like, what would happen if I just did this and see who would come my way? And I've just been amazed to beyond measure the most fascinating and amazing women who sort of come into my way because, you know, I put it out in the universe. And it came with like, this is kind of what I want. I want something different. It's like, and I think that's oftentimes the thing that we have to remember to do. Like, first you gotta say it out loud. Like, this is what I want. And write it down with intention, and then use the smarts that God gave you to go to make it happen.
Yeah, you got to get super like laser precise about what it is that you do, and then just put the action behind it. And I mean, that experience really changed my whole thinking, like just like spiritually, emotionally, like that entire, as fucked up as that experience was, everything that came about it was like, it just rounded a corner in how I carry myself and how I think, the words I use to describe myself. Like, but it took that sort of like breaking down of my like, oh, I was so unhappy at that job. I was so unhappy. I was so angry. I was unhealthy. You know, I drank too much. It was too much. And the universe, like in that movie 300, where he's like, this is Sparta, and then like hard kick dude in the back into that hole.
Yeah.
The universe texted me.
Exactly.
It kicked me in my spine and said, girl, you need to leave.
Right? Do not look back, do not pass go, leave.
Right. I don't even need the little funky $200 to pass go. I'm out.
And see, it all worked out.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
working out. It's continuing working out. It's
it's
working out
all worked
more and
out.
more every day.
More and more every damn day, I'm sure. So a really important thing is like, what's your self-care? Because obviously, after having been through that insane traumatic experience, what do you do
Mhm.
for yourself to sort of be like, okay, I will meditate, I will go watch Housewives, I will go for a
Mhm.
run, but I want to put myself first. What's your routine?
Oh my God, I do all those things. I meditate. I love housewives. I started running, which I didn't think I would like, but I really love that shit. Um, I think for me, true self care, true self care, I'm realizing isn't necessarily a reactive thing, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I had a hard day, let me go get a massage, or ooh, y'all getting on my nerves, let me sit down and meditate. Yes, though that it is like that sometimes in action, but what I'm trying to do is curate a lifestyle where care is built in, right? Like
Wow, I like that.
where like sleep is, I don't have to catch up on sleep. I sleep well consistently. I meditate consistently. That's part of my routine. I work out consistently. I feed my body good things on the regular. So I don't necessarily have to do these or have to look to these sort of decompressing moments of like, ooh, let me release, you know? So I'm trying to curate a life where self care is just part of how I live. And, that'll definitely be, it looks different. There are hard weeks where you're like, okay, I need to intentionally sit down and do this or do that or buy myself this. But I'm trying to treat myself good on a daily basis so I don't have to recover from life all the time.
I think that's key. I really think that's key. It's like you sort of design your life so that it's not like, oh my God, I have to go do this, but like it's just part of your life.
Yeah.
Like I've recently started to do that. Still a struggle.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I'm very good at like if I write down a list, then I'll do it. So I literally like I'm documenting every day that I work out, I meditate,
Uh-huh.
and I eat well, and blah blah blah. So that like
Hmm.
I remember to do it, so it becomes a habit for me. But
Yeah.
it's still a struggle.
It's definitely, and it changes. Like this past like January, I didn't do half of those things. But I think another part of self-care for me is like it's in sort of like the learning and unlearning of like the conditioning of how we think, right? Like, okay, so I had all these grand plans, especially at the top of the year, as we all do, to like eat better and exercise, but like life happens. And so I spent a lot of time eating what was available, eating what was quick, not necessarily going to the gym the way I wanted to. But the self care in that is forgiving myself and
Yes.
not beating myself up for not having performed at the impossible standard that I like set for myself to begin with.
Yeah,
Um,
that's so key. Like I literally wrote that down in my in my journal yesterday. I'm like, forgive myself for my fuck ups.
yeah. And just
Because
like,
I can't.
and I find that in practicing that self forgiveness, it makes it easier to get back into the routine after you've fallen off for, however much time. Because historically, it'd be like, okay, I'm doing so good. I went to the gym 5 days this week. I went to the grocery store. I cooked all my food. And the next week it's busy and stuff happens and you fall off. And then the following week you're so mad at yourself because you didn't do all those things. So now you're like the emotion attached to starting back up is so negative and you procrastinate because you're disappointed in yourself. And it's like, no, girl, you good. Like shit, you got your work done and you performed, and though you may not have checked off boxes in this area, you really did the damn thing in this other area. So now that you have time again, let's go ahead and go on back to this gym and just like being easier on yourself. But like that is some unlearning that you don't even realize you have to do sometimes. Like it takes us so long to even just acknowledge like, damn, maybe I'm be talking to myself too well.
Yeah, the world is hard enough on us. We don't need to be hard on ourselves.
Right? There's enough stuff telling us, you know, you're not good enough or you're not gonna make it or this is out of your reach. Like I don't I started sort of like intentionally trying to catch my negative thinking. And I'm telling myself, like, you can think anything in the world about yourself right now. Why think something bad? Why?
It's just it's and it's hard as hell to do, but it's so key that you're like, yeah, there's all this other things I could be doing. Nah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm
Nope.
it's like you know, one of the practices I learned, I went to the Tony Robbins experience a few years ago, and I walked on hot coals,
Mhm.
and it was cray cray.
Yes.
But
I want to
it,
hear more about that later.
oh Lord heaven, 4 days of like intense, where rip you apart, and then they build you back up again, and you're like, oh, what have I been through? But there are some things that like still stick with me, and one of them is like when you have those sort of negative self-thought, like assign a really obnoxious voice to it, because in your head, so it sounds like a voice, you'd be like, bye, girl, bye. Like,
Yeah.
if you heard, if it was like a Becky-esque voice, and you heard that negative thought in that voice, you'd be like, oh, really? And just be like, um, essentially just sort of flick it to the side, because like whenever you hear those kinds of voices anyway, you're just like, I can't, please, girl. But I do that sometimes, right? Like I throw in like this really obnoxious, annoying, high-pitched voice of this sort of negative thought, and I'm like, what? Why would I listen to that? Oh,
Hold on. What's
like,
your negative thought voice? What's your negative thought voice?
and it's a super high Becky-esque voice. Oh my God! Yeah, like, and so, but yeah, I do it, and it does. It's as silly and wacky as it is. It actually does work, because
What's funny is, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
oh, go ahead.
What's funny is I didn't realize that I did that for, I don't do it anymore, but I did that for a little while because it made me laugh, but I didn't realize that it was like a self-care tactic. So when I would be like getting a little riled up emotionally, which I tend to do, I'm a Piscean woman,
Same,
Are
same.
you really? You're a
Yeah.
Pisces?
Yeah, February 19th. Well, I'm a Pisces Aquarius cusp, so I can get the best of
Ah,
both. And then
okay. So I'm Pisces woman, Cancer rising, and like Gemini moon. So I just be all over the place. And what I would do is in my like worst Jamaican accent. I don't think I have a good Jamaican accent. So I
I'll be
would
the
tell
judge.
I would tell myself, I would go, Adia, calm the fuck down.
Oh, okay, that's a somewhat decent Jamaican accent. I will give you some credit for that. As
it's
as a child of Jamaicans, I'm like, oh girl. But
oh, it's really based off of all the times I watched Cool Runnings as a child. That's pretty much where it came
but
from.
it's good though. But see, that's the thing, because like I think that was the thing that they wanted us to kind of understand, that like if you sort of assign the kind of levity and the humor of it, it's like it's really not that big of a deal. Um,
Yeah.
and if it becomes a habit for you, where you like put this this for me, Becky voice, you a proper Jamaican voice, you it allows it to like it helps you just to sort of move that out of your way, and
hmm
not and beat yourself up for it, because it's otherwise you'll never leave your house.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely I realized that the negative thinking had reached like a peak and something needed to be done where I started feeling anxious to physically leave my house because I convinced myself that all these negative experiences were waiting for me on the other side of that door. And it's just like, I was like, we need to call in some reinforcements. What's going on here? Because this is bullshit. Like, I'm not comfortable just in my day to day. So, yeah, if you got to talk to yourself, talk to somebody else, write some shit down, talk to your ancestors, whatever it is, man.
Therapist, coach, whatever you need, but talk. Um,
Yeah.
and not be afraid of that, because that's the thing you got to do. Like, it's again, this is also part of the reason why I'm doing this. So, like, I want women, especially, to hear everyone talk about how they do this, because
Hmm.
we've been so accustomed to hearing super strong Black women who can, move mountains with their elbows, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, we're human beings.
Aren't you so tired of that? Like that whole strong Black woman thing? Like it's
Oh,
tiring.
Jesus. It's so tight. Like I said, I cannot move a mountain with my elbows. Sorry. Um,
And it's like, yeah, we're dope and we're great and we have a lot of like unique qualities, but like we're still human,
just
and like people will can take advantage of all that we do in spite of and despite of because they've convinced ourselves we are superhuman and lack sort of like any of the emotional or psychological barriers that other people have. Like we get sad, we're depressed, we're anxious, we worry, we get disappointed, we get heartbroken. And it's like stupid as fuck to realize you have to explain that to people.
I know. It's like, oh God, like, really, y'all? This is what you're doing? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, because I could talk to you for all day. So before I forget, last question. So part of the series, as I said, kind of we'll put out in the universe and see what happens. So, what is your give and or an ask that you'd like to put out to the universe?
What is my gift to the universe and what am I asking for from the universe?
Yeah, like, so is there
Oh,
that you need or something you'd like to offer up? Like, because I think, that also helps in terms of, like, say it and it'll happen.
oh man. Let me think about this so I give you like an answer that doesn't feel like rambling. Um, my give to the universe is um so let me say this. So the business that I moved back to Atlanta to start is my own ad agency called Artillery. And it is the result of those negative experiences that I had where I was like, I really, really love copywriting. I love this particular type of communication that is advertising. And I don't want to have to subject myself to all these experiences that are negative or go against who I am as a person in order to be quote unquote successful. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own agency and I am going to do branding and advertising for small Black owned businesses and help them get their business to a point where it's just easy for consumers to just patronize them. So, the first thing you do when you hear about a business, you go to their social feed or their website. So, my give is that I want to be able to help folks that have like their logo, their website look good, their social media look good. So, every day, the people who are looking to buy Black, it's easy. You got your shit together. You don't have a janky ass site. Like, we have a lot of great entrepreneurs and creatives out there and people are seeking their products and services, but you got to look good too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what my give is. And I feel strongly about patronizing Black businesses. I love it. It's a hobby of mine. I've been doing it for years. I used to keep like a Google spreadsheet of Black businesses that I found and loved, and I'd send it out to my friends and family, and they would always ignore it. It's cool though. And so I just really want to make that my life work because I feel like that is my little drop in the ripple effect of helping our community where it's like we're contributing to the income of a Black household, which means that these are more people who can afford their rents and their mortgages. So we're not getting gentrified and pushed out left and right. There are people who have disposable income so that they can invest in their own communities and not look to municipalities to give them after school programs or have initiatives in their community that help their neighbors. Like helping another Black family be able to afford to send their children to school or whatever it is. I'm not saying that I change the world, but I want to keep our dollars in our community. All kinds of communities do this. So I feel like that's just my contribution. How can I make it to where the money is coming into our communities and we can be proactive about our position in this world? So that's what my give is. And so my ask is just for the universe to continue to put me in the right place and the right time and these connections. And like, just like, you know, the universe set you up to meet me and all the wonderful women who are going to be on this podcast, I feel the feeling is mutual where I'm like, look, this dope woman who owns her own business and she knows everybody. And, you know, whether or not that contributes directly to my business, just to be surrounded by those types of people, to be connected to people with that mindset. So my ask is to continue to expand my network and my resources and have faith that, you know, I'll be able to build a roster. Oh, the other part of my business is I want to contract out Black creatives to do the work. That's the other half of artillery. So building advertising and branding for small Black-owned businesses and contracting out Black creatives to create it, so that the work that's being done is done by people who already understand them culturally. And so just continuing to meet people and to have like genuine, authentic connections with people that can help me fulfill my gifts. So whether that's people for accountability, just to be around, to make sure I'm around hustle-minded people, to actually find a roster of creatives so that when I do have clients, I'm like, oh, I have a photographer for you. Ooh, I have an editor for you. I've got an art director. Finding people who connect with this mission in some way and who are just willing to help me build it. So that's my ask, is just to continue to be in right relationship with my community and people who understand where I'm coming from and who care enough about what I'm saying to contribute whatever it is that they have to offer to help me build it.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Adia, I could talk to you all afternoon. It has been such a pleasure. Oh my goodness. Very rarely do I get the questions on the show, so thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
And we'll put all the info about you in the show notes so folks can get in touch with you.
Okay.
And, you know, and listen to her call. So if you're creative, a Black creative who wants to get some work, I'm sure Ms. Betts can help you out with that as well, because she's hella connected, as I already know. And, you know, the network will just grow and grow and grow. And I do hope that all 29 women end up connecting with each other as part of this as well. So
yes.
it's gonna be a good thing. But it was such a delight to have you on. Thank you for being part of 29 Days of Magic.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so honored. I said 2020 is gonna be lit, and look at it. It's only February 1st. Look at God.
Exactly. Awesome. And thanks everyone for listening. That is our show.